Welcome to The Struggle is Real, a show for 20-somethings that are trying to figure out adulting. I'm your host, Justin Peters. Each episode, we focus on solving a problem that we will face throughout this defining decade that wasn't covered in the classroom. This could include topics about our career, health, relationships, and money. Let's get into it. I've been so excited to share this episode that I'm going to skip the typical intro and jump right into my guest bio. Joining me today is Tim Traill. Who is Tim Traill? Tim is a husband and father of 5 children. Tim has spent 3 decades working his way up as a corporate executive in the financial services industry. Last year, Tim decided he needed a career break. As you'll hear in the episode, the beginning of his break was a challenging period. Tim was missing that sense of purpose and community he found through work. That was until he stumbled into TikTok. It started as a joke with his kids. He created DIY videos showcasing home improvement, decor ideas, and handyman tips. But what started as a joke quickly turned into viral content. And now, only 5 months later, Tim has over 148 followers and 1.6 million likes. Of course, we'll talk about TikTok, but I also hope you pick up something about embracing change, developing curiosity, and empathy too. Now let's get into it. I hope you enjoy my conversation with the corporate executive turned DIY TikToker, Tim Traill. Tim, it's a pleasure.
Justin, how are you today?
I'm super excited. I've been really stoked about this conversation. My research was a lot different than usual. I'm typically reading a book or listening to a podcast or reading a blog to prep for my upcoming guest. This was the first time I got to watch TikTok for an hour, and I didn't say it was unproductive.
So was it an hour that turned into 10? The danger of TikTok.
No, I stayed solely on your page and watched all your videos from start to finish, which was a lot of fun. So we're going to be talking about TikTok, and I think we'll probably weave in a lot of other things. But first, what prompted you to start your TikTok account?
So it started on a bit of a whim, to be honest with you. I'm in a period of transition right now in my life between having a very lengthy professional career and taking a big chunk of time off. And I'm several months now into taking that time off and becoming a little more relaxed, a little more laid back. I have a few more cycles day to day to interact with my friends and my kids. In particular with my children who spend a lot of time on TikTok. It became a bit of a joke about the old people that were starting to jump in and create content, and it was going to ruin the platform. So on a whim, I signed up, and in a week or so, I somehow managed to pass 1,000 followers. And it was a bit of a joke, to be honest, Justin, just to get started. And I was just being myself. And over a very short period of time, I realized, there's some traction here. There's actually an opportunity to get some exposure and connected with folks from around the world, from different regions who have different backgrounds, different ages, different thoughts and beliefs, different cultures. And I just kind of fell into it. And I decided I would I'll just keep being myself, doing my little quirky projects. Some of them are craft oriented, some of them are maintenance oriented. At some point, I'll get into more heavy duty renovations and, tiling and, electrical stuff and bigger things. But it was, again, I got in as a bit of a whim, and it just took off.
That's cool. How much did you understand or know about TikTok before you started your account? And maybe even taking a step back for that, did you do any video type work or content creation?
So I'm a geek. First and foremost, I'm a technologist. My career is primarily focused on technology. So I've been using social media. I've been using my computers to do various things my entire life, at least my adult life, since computers became so relevant to us. Facebook, Instagram, dabbled a little bit for friends and family. Used to do some of my profiles, some of my DIY projects. Got some interest. My family and friends certainly know me as a do-it-yourself kind of guy who just likes to learn things every day. But no, TikTok was a new phenomenon, and yes, it's social media, but it's different. As you get in there, you have these little 60-second increments of content, and you flash from one to the other, and you can be learning about how to groom a pet, and then the next thing you're learning about the science behind the vaccines that we're all taking right now, and then you jump to politics, and it's just it's a very different platform to me. No, other than watching my kids use it and waste time, I didn't know much about it.
And now that you've been on the platform, used the platform, I'm assuming you're a consumer along with being a creator. What's your general thoughts on the platform? Do you like it compared to some of the other social medias that you've used?
Absolutely. In fact, from my perspective, and it's important to stress my perspective because I appreciate that everyone has their own perspective, and that sort of the basis of the point I'm about to make. What I find about TikTok is it is bringing together the masses in real time, close to real time, and but it's not sugar coated. It's not like the fake book or the Facebook. Sorry, I've always called it fake book, or I have for the last 5 or 10 years, because a lot of the social media platforms, everyone puts on their big smile and everything's the world's perfect, and they're married and they have kids, and this is wonderful. In TikTok, you see a good balance of reality. You will see people struggling. You will see people jump online who have had, who have been alcoholics, who've had drug addictions, who have body image issues, who are just putting themselves out there. And you have the experts, you have the people coming in and doing that fluffy stuff. But it's just a good, I believe it's a good reflection of humanity today. And it's wonderful, and it's also scary at times. The trolling, some of the negative things that can happen on that platform are real. But it's life. So I find the platform very different.
Yeah. I love the platform too, just for microlearning. And I feel like there's tons of that on your account or your channel in general. I mean, I love the home decor. You did that feature wall with your guitar. And if people are watching on YouTube right now too, they can see one of your guitars back there, but they should go check out your feature wall that's down in the basement. That was a cool project. Yeah. You got the hummingbird feeder, that indoor herb garden, which I think that was in one of your very first videos. And I was like, what is that? Are we just gonna pass up on that? I was curious, are there things that you add into your video or projects that you might've done that might spark some curiosity or some comments? Have you thought about oh, that was in the background of that video and that's why people might ask about this now?
Definitely. Definitely. Now, initially I didn't think very much about that, but you're bang on. You have about 5 or 6 seconds to, maybe less in some cases, depending on the age of the person viewing your content, to hook them for the next 5-second increment. And there are times, a good example, some of the videos I've done with glass cutting, and maybe some of the ones with their herb garden that you just referenced, there were products in the background. My wife's obsessed with Norwex, which is a company that sells, environmentally friendly cleaning products and cloths and such. I don't really think much of them other than I love using them. Wow, the traction, for 40 plus women that jumped in and said, I spy with my little eye a Norwex cloth on your counter. It had nothing to do with the content itself, but it did lead to interaction, and it led to conversation. And frankly, it led to finding something in common with a stranger. And there's a number of examples of that if you look through my videos or other videos that you watch, where I find people are attuned to the detail. Do I intentionally do it? No. There's a couple of times where I've thought about shooting video where I've intentionally tried to put some kind of a placement of something in it to get engagement, and it's backfired on me. Backfired meaning just
flops.
A couple thousand views. Flops.
Yeah. That's interesting. So you mentioned you're on a break right now. You've been out of work or off of work. I don't know, however verbiage you want to use on that, because I think it was super intentional the way you did it, for almost a year. Is this correct?
Yeah. So I've worked almost 30 years now in the financial services world, working for global financial service companies. The most recent one was 23 years in length. Great experience, phenomenal experience for me, especially based on kind of how my wife and I got started with our family at a very young age. I didn't have the opportunity to go to school based on how quickly we had children and needed to make some money. For me, after 30 years working in financial services, in particular since the economic collapse back in 2008, which probably some of your listeners won't be too familiar with, but it's been a tough go, especially in the North American markets and financial services. So it was a grind. A senior leader within a senior global organization, lots of exposure internationally. I've worked a lot in the U.S., certainly a lot here in Canada where I live, but it was wearing on me. I'm 49. I'll be 50 years old this year. I have 5 children. My wife and I have been married almost 30 years. And I just needed a break. And I realized this maybe 2 or 3 years ago. It was starting to emerge as this idea that I needed to do something different.
What were you taking in there that might have led you to that conclusion or that thesis?
Well, when you're a senior executive managing millions of dollars in budget and hundreds of employees in this environment, in this economic environment, again for the last many years, it's all been about cut. And there's a lot of jobs that have been moved outside of the U.S. and outside of Canada to other regions in the market, and it's called labor arbitrage. I totally understand it. I never worked for a charity. I worked for a public company whose job was to make money for shareholders. So you make decisions based on, things that are in the best interest of your various cohorts, in this case, shareholders. It's tiring. Eliminating jobs, moving people around, cutting budgets. It's a grind. It's a grind. And I needed a break mentally. We've been through a lot, raising 5 children, dealing with some challenges of aging parents. And it was just a lot. So I decided back in 2019 that I was going to try to figure out how to orchestrate an exit, either find something new and move on, or just walk away and take a break. And that's what ended up happening. Frankly, the pandemic was the unexpected. So as you said, I've been off for a while. I've been unemployed for a while. It's been almost 12 months. I did have a plan where I thought 3 to 6 months I'd take a break and find myself back into another big international company doing something very similar, making the same amount of money, that sort of thing. But you know what? I sort of embraced the pandemic, as challenging as it's been. And that's one of the reasons why I've had a difficult time finding that next opportunity. It allowed me to really step back and assess some things in my life, look in that rearview mirror, which, the only time you can do that is when you've moved forward, to look back in history and learn from it. And TikTok actually was a big part of this, Justin. I realized that TikTok allowed me to be who I am, to be myself, but to be myself with a little bit of that, 30-year history working in the corporate environment sprinkled in, human interaction, being empathetic and listening to people. These are things now that in the last few months, I realized, I don't have to go back to the big corporate America job. I don't need to be working internationally. And I'm going to find a job soon. TikTok, unless TikTok continues to grow, if I get a few million more likes and follows, who knows? Maybe I can make a go of it. But I probably will be gainfully employed again soon. But it'll be in a different world. It'll be in a different type of organization, different scale, because I have changed.
Yeah, and with that change, what does that next opportunity look like? Like, what are things that you've now decided over the last year that are important to you in the next opportunity? How'd you get to that conclusion?
Well, certainly whatever opportunity I pursue going forward, there's going to be balance. There's going to be balance between work and life. And that's something that a lot of us in the culture, the Western culture have grown into, which is we put everything on the line with our jobs. We work 40, 60, 80 hours a week. We're away from our families a lot, and it's just go, grow, make money, be happy, go on big vacations. There's not a lot of balance in our lives for most of us, or for the most part. For myself, going forward, there'll be more balance for sure. More hobbies, whether it's playing guitars, whether it's recycling wood from pallet boards, as you referenced my wall in the basement with my guitars, whether it's artsy, crafty stuff. I made a hummingbird feeder for the first time out of 100% recycled material a few weeks ago, and that's had a lot of traction on TikTok as well. And personally, it's given me an odd sense of fulfillment.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't taken the year off, Justin, I'm not sure that these things would have clicked in my head.
It's really interesting that you mentioned that, because last year I took part of the year off as well. I took 7 months off as kind of a self-made sabbatical, left in January, had a different vision of that. It was supposed to be 6 months, what that 6 months was going to look like. And then the pandemic came and kind of ruined some of the plans, but also still gave me that white space to like start thinking about what's important to me. Cause I've been running in my own career since 15, really making money, and always pretty much trying to work full-time, part-time, as much as I could push into my schedule since 15. And I, just after 12 years, I just needed some space to kind of step back and figure out, what the hell do I want to do? Obviously I need to make some money. So how would I like to go about making that money? And I kind of came to the conclusion that I can start separating different factors in my life. Like, my career doesn't have to bring me all of my fulfillment or my joy or my happiness. Like, it can be the primary way I make money. And with some balance, if I find a career that can give me some balance, I can spend some time on a hobby that really brings me joy and fulfillment, like this podcast. So my TikTok was this podcast. It was kind of born out of my time off. And then I got to spend, and now I get to have great conversations with people like you. And I still have a day job, so I'm not, stressing about this podcast, holding me financially stable. I can really just enjoy it and kind of shape it whatever direction I want. So I really like that. And I think sometimes we try to jam too much expectations for our career to carry. Like, it's got to be, what is developing your skills, what is making you money, what is bringing you joy, sometimes even who your friends are too. Like, how many of us can say we have deep relationships outside of our colleagues? Like, and the older you get, I feel like the more I'm like tied to just my colleagues. And someone like you, it must have been tough walking away from 23 years with the same company. I read that LinkedIn post that you put out whenever you're leaving your job, and I could tell relationships mean a lot to you. Like, it wasn't like, you weren't tied up in this whole job satisfaction. I think the toughest thing, at least what I got from that letter, was leaving the relationships that you had with your colleagues and your vendors and all these people that have come and gone through that period of your life.
No, Justin, you're bang on. The way my brain thinks about my past, and I think the past of many, is, when we're born and when we're put on this earth, everything's very prescriptive. We look to our parents to teach us how to walk and how to run and how to eat, and how to be potty trained and this and that, and we go to school and we learn structure and we learn process, and everything's prescriptive. Everything around us, we're looking to the world to help guide us towards paths or a path. At some point in my life, I realized, and it was a hindsight thing. I didn't actually realize this until many years later, that I moved from that prescriptive, I need the world to tell me what to do, to more of almost an osmosis type concept, where I was feeding off of everything that's happening around me. Most importantly, the people. And as you said, the people, you referenced my LinkedIn article when I left my employer last summer. It was very emotional. It actually took me a couple of weeks to sit down and pen that. When I penned it, it only took me, a half hour or so, but the people is a big part of it for me. I'm an extrovert. I get energy from those around me. And it was a difficult transition. I mean, I'll be honest, as a 49-year-old, I can tell you, we continue to learn every single day. We learn hard skills, we learn emotional skills, we learn coping skills. The most difficult transition I've made in my life, it wasn't having twins at the age of 20 with my young girlfriend. It wasn't dealing with some tragedy within my life. It was leaving those people. It was that transition to silence and acknowledging that I didn't have people around, up and down the hallways every day to say hello to and talk by the water cooler with. And again, funny enough, connecting the dots to TikTok, my only regret over the last 11 plus months is that I didn't start doing the TikTok thing on day one, or maybe a couple of months after I left, because I've found I've realized that what I'm getting out of interacting with people who have diverse backgrounds, who have different challenges, come from different cultures, is I'm back into that sponge mode, and I'm actually fulfilled, and I'm learning every day again. Even though the content, if you go through my content feed from beginning to end, it's just Tim spewing a bunch of tips and hacks and this and that, and you could find that anywhere. The real value is what happens after those posts go out. And, people ask questions. You referenced the air conditioner cleaner earlier. I can't remember if it was in our pre-conversation or during this interview, but I did another TikTok post about how to clean your air circulation vents in bathrooms. Now, what a silly piece of content. Well, that was a couple of months ago. This morning, I got a note from a woman somewhere in the US who saw my video on the weekend. And so she went up this morning with her vacuum. She pulled down she started trying to clean the thing up, realized there's a bird's nest up there. Well, Justin, when we're done this call, I'm going online to look for tips of how to remove birds, humanely and properly from ducts that are connected to bathroom fans to try to help this lady out. That's value. That's like being at work to me.
Yeah.
That's giving back.
That's so interesting. And I love when you respond to comments, you put the comment up there and somebody asks something great. You're great at being really empathetic, even when you're responding to some of your comments. Like, I'm reading some of your comments or your video response comments. It's really interesting that you start off first acknowledging the person, because they're usually disagreeing with you or telling you something. Yeah. It's like the green thumbs whenever they were telling you, don't put the succulent in the self-watering feed, or or Maya, like, people asking about shaving her, things like that. Like, you're so great at lowering everyone's guard. Like, hey, thank you. I appreciate you. You acknowledge them. You don't put them down or be defensive. And then you just politely explain what your line of thinking on that. That is such a skill that I picked up watching some of your videos. Was that something you learned through your career, or how did you pick up doing something like that? Is that 5 kids? Like what? Yeah.
Absolutely, Justin, you're right. I mean, it's being a parent, it's being a husband, but yeah, it's a lot of it is being in the workplace and being 9 to 5 and beyond. Working with strangers for the most part, people who aren't your best friends, and dealing with problem resolution, trying to help teams figure out how to be more collaborative and move things from point A to point B constructively, most importantly with a smile as often as possible. And you're right. I as much as I love these social media platforms like TikTok, this concept that everyone in the world has the ability to step up in the soapbox now and share what they want to share. Well, that's true of the haters and those negative people, those, the trolls, as we call them on TikTok. And I have no shortage of trolls. You referenced something, you mentioned shaving hair, and you're referring to one of our dogs. We have a golden retriever. She's old. She's a senior. She can't shake anymore. She can't walk very well. Well, we shave her down in the summer. It's vet recommended. It's groomer supported. But yeah, the hate I got from people, like, how could you possibly groom your dog? You're going to destroy it. And there's pros and cons in that scenario. I won't get into that here, but it took 24 hours. I even referenced that actually on that video. And one of the first comments, somebody said something similar to what you did about how, wow, you were so gracious, and I responded, and I was honest. So I took 24 hours. The 24-hour rule, all of us should think about that. You get a comment on social media that really irks you, and you want to lash out, you want to quickly Google and get some facts and throw it back in their face. Don't. Just take 24 hours. And don't think about that conflict itself or that debate. Think about the person, where they're coming from, how much experience they have in life. It humanizes them. And then in turn, when I then film a video response like that one, I do think I'm more empathetic. I feel like I'm bring things down a little bit to a neutral level, if you will. And just provide a further platform for folks to have dialogue. And in that particular instance around, do you shave your golden retriever or not in the summer? if you go through the comments, and there's hundreds of them, it's actually people still having the conversation and debate. And all of a sudden there's vets and there's groomers piping in with facts, and everyone's learning. Again, it's kind of a trivial thing, but that's what, in my mind, life is about. Every day, just getting up and learning something new and doing so constructively.
Yeah, which brings me to another point where I'm assuming, I mean, I can tell, and I hadn't worked with you before, but reading your recommendations on LinkedIn, how you wrote that LinkedIn post, just getting to know you a little bit through my research, relationships are a huge strength and skill set for you whenever it comes to your career. But something I noticed both, I think, from a hobbyist standpoint, the fact that you are interested in spending time in hobbies, and what I'm assuming probably catapulted you in your own career is curiosity, is this whole concept of learning something new every single day. And it is impressive that you are a senior executive at a large financial services firm. It's even more impressive that you started in the mailroom at 19, 20 years old. Can you walk us through how you got that opportunity to begin your march or your career path to a senior executive?
Yeah, I'll try to sum it up. I mean, my story isn't that unique. I know this story, many can relate to it. And I've met many people much older than myself and my wife who have shared similar stories. But there's not a lot of us that talk about it. So my wife and I, not necessarily high school sweethearts. We both had our own high school sweethearts, but towards the end of our high school careers, we fell in love. And after not too long, surprise, surprise, we got pregnant, found ourselves not only pregnant with one, but with two children at the age of 19. And, that came with a whole bunch of life lessons that were accelerated and wow. Yeah, that was a very tumultuous period for our lives. But what it did is it kind of forced me to get down to my roots, which were that survival instinct. And something you and I didn't talk about previously, but I'll tell you, image-wise, back in the day when I was 19, my hair was down to my waist. I 5 earrings, hanging off my out of my ears, and bracelets all up and down my arm. I was going to be a rock star. But I realized that wasn't going to pay the bills. It wasn't going to put diapers on the kids. It wasn't going to put food on the table. And I jumped on the train. I live in a suburb outside of Toronto, Ontario, here in Canada, and I jumped on a train and went downtown, put my hair in a ponytail, and just started applying at temp agencies. And I did find myself, I landed a job in a mailroom. As you said, it sounds very contrived, but I started at 19 working in the mailroom of actually Fidelity Investments. I'll share the name of the company. They were new to Canada. And, I think my nature was such that I've always been inquisitive. I like to ask questions, and I like to raise my hand and offer myself, even if I don't know what I'm doing. And that's essentially what I did. As that company started to grow in the early 90s in Canada, I just kept putting up my hand. When we had challenges and we were short staffed to do processing or do this or that, I would say, well, I can do that on my lunch hour. And it just, one thing led to another, and I just kept being given opportunities. I used to call them shoulder taps. Someone would tap on my shoulder and say, "Hey, Tim, I know you've now been," so I went from mailroom to marketing. "You've been in marketing now for a couple of years. You're entry level. Would you like to move over and learn sales? Because you happen to build good relationships with brokers." So I made that move. And I just kind of went with the flow. There's really no secret to it other than the concept that as paths emerged, I just willingly onto them. Didn't know where they were going to take me, and I went with it. And progressed 30 years.
You kind of glazed over it, but I don't think everybody would work in a mailroom and volunteer on their lunch break, probably like the only sane time that they have, to go and take inbound calls from brokers for no great gift or reward at the end of that line. Like, it was you just realizing that they needed help because they were inundated with calls, you raised your hand, hey, this is my only free hour that I have, throughout my workday. How could I help you? And then through that, one of the people in the marketing team realized that you have the core skills needed to being a great employee. Was that something that was instilled in you through your parents, or that you learned looking up to somebody? Like how did you know to just raise your hand, volunteer your time? That's just, I don't, like you say that's common sense, but maybe that's just not
Yeah,
common
it's fair.
practice.
Yeah, not Justin, that's absolutely fair. I've thought a lot about this over the last several years, because I'm very fortunate. I feel very grateful for the career that I've had, and I believe I'll continue to have, despite not having the formal education and things of that nature. And as I think about it, I do believe that, probably being raised by a very strong woman. My mother is a really exceptional individual who, in the early years, actually from when I was born, my father left just before I was born. And so my mom was on her own right through delivery, having to move from one city to the next with a girlfriend. I had an older sister, so there was two of us that my mom was looking after. And my memories are not that crisp as a young man, as a very young child. But I know my mom taught me perseverance. Funny enough, she also taught me how to sew and crochet and do a bunch of other skills that, may or may not surface on my TikTok channel in the days and months ahead. But yeah, I would attribute a lot of that to my mom being in survival mode back in the 70s and needing to figure things out and push forward. And being along for that ride was, probably the best place it could be.
Yeah. So how are you thinking about parenting now? You mentioned you're a father of 5. You had your twins at 20. How young is your youngest right now?
Yeah, our youngest is 16.
16.
So we have, so our twins are 28, or actually they just turned 29 last month. And so they're,
so about
4
13
boys
years.
13 years.
29 years of parenting.
Yeah.
Walk me through some of that. Like, what did you learn through that? And what are you thinking about in terms of instilling values or legacy with your kids?
So that's a really broad question. So I'll do my best to attempt to answer it. I believe that I used this analogy earlier, that there's paths put in front of us every day. I think for the most part, increasingly as time goes on, at least in Western culture, when paths emerge, people shy away. They turn. I'm not familiar with that. My encouragement as a parent has always been walk down. You can take 2 or 3 steps down that path. If it's uncomfortable, if it's scary, if it's not what you like, you can always step back and you can just move to another path. But you need to move forward in life. And my philosophy as a parent, not having the formal education, has been education is important. And if that's a path you want to take, that's a path your mom and I are going to support you on, and we're going to help figure out how to get you into school and how to help, put some guardrails in place to get you through that phase of your life. But school's not for you, and that's true for some of my kids who are, maybe a little bit like me, very hands-on, not very academic in the traditional sense. Just take an opportunity to learn something new. Introduce yourself to things, to people that you otherwise, might not want to, or might feel a little bit uncomfortable. And through taking steps, whether it's having a conversation with somebody about what they're doing in their life, or picking up a book, learning about something that, you don't even know if you're interested or not. You're gonna figure out, is that a path to move down or not?
The 29-year-olds, they're probably on their path and they're, kind of learning and whatnot. There's still probably some guidance with the 16-year-old though. Like I remember 16. It's a really challenging time because you know enough to be dangerous. And that's probably the real problem. Like you have some responsibilities now, but like, are you worrying all the time about just like the major mistakes they could potentially make? And like, how do you go about balancing the whole fact that, hey, I need to guide my kids in the direction in the right direction, however you define right direction, while also not limiting their freedom and allowing them to create their own path.
Yeah, it's an interesting world, and this response might sound like it contradicts a little bit of my past as a parent, but I think we have an incredible opportunity today. Our youth do. The world's opening up. There's no longer geographic boundaries the way I knew them as a child growing up. There's no longer cultural boundaries that exist. This diversity inclusion is a common theme now. It's something that's discussed internationally through all modes of life. And what I've seen, particularly with my youngest kids, is they're very in tune with what's happening in the world. And I'm actually realizing that I have so much to learn from them in this moment. My parents, and nothing negative about my parents, they're wonderful people, but back when I was 16 years of age, like to your earlier point, they know the rules, they know what to do, they provide guidance, they put the framework in place so that I'm successful, so I wake up on time, so I get to school on time, so I learn at the right rate, and I can make something of myself. And I'm finding the youth today, again, an ode to TikTok. Like, I love this about TikTok is I can have really good conversations with a 16, 17-year-old that probably a few years ago I couldn't. There wasn't a platform to connect. So with my kids, diversity inclusion is really important to me. It was and continues to be as an executive working in a large environment, but certainly as a human being, it's really important to me. But I'm still learning angles to what it means to be inclusive from my 16-year-old daughter that I never thought of. So she calls me out. She calls out adults, and I'm okay with that. Sometimes we have to remind her, to do it a little bit more tactfully. And here's a good example of being tactful. May sound a little bit silly, but back to TikTok and differences in cultures and regions of where people are from. I do DIY stuff, so I do projects all the time. But often when I enunciate words like project, I'll say project. The amount of 18-year-old young men in particular, almost always young white men, that jump in from various parts of North America and say, "You are an effing idiot. Don't you know it's project?" I get it. I understand their motivation. But those are individuals that they need a little bit more time and exposure to the world, because if they enter the workplace and call someone out for their enunciation or their pronunciation of something, it's not going to go well for them. So I think, it's great that everyone has a voice. Kids everywhere have a voice today, but they still need a little bit of mentorship.
Yeah. That was very tactfully said.
Yeah.
So as we're kind of rounding out this conversation here, I do want to speak briefly on your marriage.
Sure.
Almost 30 years together with somebody. Yeah. All 30 years, you've had lots of kids in the equation. Getting pregnant at 19 puts a lot of stress on your life. Not being able to attend university. How the hell do you stay together over a 30-year period? Like, is there anything that you attribute, a moment that was a learning lesson early on in your marriage, or something you guys do as rituals or routines that you feel like have paid great dividends and allowed you to have a thriving long-term relationship?
Yeah, for sure. And I think for us, first of all, I wouldn't recommend anyone intentionally going out and starting a life the way my wife and I did, because to your point, there are a lot of bumps and challenges along the way. Although embedded in that statement, when you do start young, and this is true for us, and this helped us, we didn't understand the concept of disposable income. We never had it. We actually never had disposable income, probably until we were, into our 30s, and had a whole bunch of kids, maybe even closer to 40, where we had enough money where we could go and take that fabulous vacation, that 10-day cruise with all of our children, and spend lots of money. When you don't know something like disposable income, it's okay. You don't know what you're missing, right? So that allowed us to venture forward and do so comfortably, at least being at peace with who we were, the money we were making, the things we were doing to provide for our family. But as a couple on the relationship front, without getting too deep, like any couple, we've had a lot of challenges. We both have different pasts. We have different skeletons in the closet from our youth that at various times reared their heads, and figuring out how to work together, and understanding, most importantly, that we aren't the same people. We each have strengths and weaknesses, and they're not the same. And at times we have to figure out, I need to sharpen my strengths in order to offset my spouse's weaknesses, and vice versa. We've established a true partnership, and that's something that I think has been critical in my personal life, and frankly in my professional life as well. But is understanding that I'm never going to be perfect. I will be wrong at least 49% of the time when I'm conversing with my spouse, and you get on with it. It's being supportive of one another, and use the word empathy earlier on in our conversation. Being empathetic to one another with challenges, as opposed to sympathetic. It's very, very important nuance.
Yes, agreed.
In order to support one another.
Yeah. Speaking of supportive, what does she think about your content creation career that is becoming and I don't even know if we mention it, and maybe I'll mention it in the bio too. I mean, last I checked, you're at 123,000 followers, 1.4 million likes. Sure, they're vanity metrics, but there's something concrete there. What you're doing is successful. When did she start taking that serious, and what does she think about it now?
Yeah, so we still joke a little bit about it. It's only been 4 or 5 months now. She's supportive. She's not a big social media person herself. She is on TikTok, and for the first time, she often will see some of the hate that comes through, and those trolls that post some nasty things, and her tendency is to jump in there and defend me. She doesn't generally. She did last week on a topic, and I had to quickly pull her from that. But I think she buys into it. I am doing a bit of affiliate marketing now. So what I found in the early days, the first few posts I did, which are terrible, I wouldn't recommend anyone watching them, but I had a lot of questions, and it took me so much time to answer them around products. I realized, well, you got this Amazon associate thing. So I set up an Amazon associate account. So I am getting some income through purchases there. So once I started buying pizza on Friday night from my TikTok money, it became real for her. So she's supportive.
That's cool. And what have you learned about, I mean, you spent some time in marketing itself, and TikTok. I mean, I could see your growth over the first, from, video 1 to video 10. You kind of figured out a good strategy for you. What have you learned about marketing in particular with your TikTok content?
Yeah, so I have actually learned a fair bit. And as well, I realized that I knew a lot more before I started about marketing from my past. I made some decisions after a few successful posts that if I was going to grow on this platform, to really figure out if it was sustainable, to steer away from certain things. So this screws are better than nails. Terrible content. It might have got me 4 million views and a bunch of followers, but it's such a debatable thing. So I have steered a little bit recently towards the crafty stuff, which actually gives me a little bit more fulfillment. And I'm learning how much I enjoy doing that. But the cohort or the audience that tends to get attracted to that is of a certain demographic, of a certain type of individual. And I'm right now focused on doing more of that and growing that base. I've also learned the mistakes too. I posted a video a couple of weekends ago about one of my dogs. We were talking about it earlier. it totally took me to the wrong side of TikTok for 2 weeks. I all of a sudden went from the DIY stuff and getting tons of traction to all of a sudden every video I saw was about pets. And every comment I had was about people and their dogs and their cats, which kind of got me off target and lost some momentum. But yeah, lots of learnings every day. And do you know what? You made a reference earlier, or I think we both did, about being younger and knowing everything. I think we were a little more tactful in how we said it. But I've often reflected back on the last few years of my life, and certainly the last 4 or 5 months since I've been on TikTok, and realized that I am so grateful as a human being to have the opportunity to learn and be corrected every single day. It's a lot more satisfying than when I was younger and I knew everything and closed my mind to the feedback, constructive or otherwise.
That was a really great thought. I really enjoyed that. What's next with TikTok? It doesn't seem like you have any pending projects out there that you've teased that's coming. First of all, how do you decide what projects that you're going to take on and display on TikTok? Do you have a list?
Well, so I do. I've got a bit of a mental list, but so far, the things that I've done are just things that have naturally happened in my life. Fixing a hole on my deck, having too many hours of nothing to do. So building a hummingbird feeder out of an old vodka bottle, pop cans and string. Those things were not, I didn't set out a content strategy to build that or to do those things. It just happened. So right now I'm in a bit of transition. I'm not really sure what's coming next. We spend our time here in Canada, at least in our world, my family, on the weekends, we go up north to a cottage. So some of my content, you'll see me flipping back and forth between the city and being way up, in the Algonquin Highlands region of Ontario, Canada. We'll see what comes. There are some things I'm sitting on. You might find this interesting, but for example, this weekend we had some rain. And one of the challenges being in a cottage on an island up north in Canada is there's mice everywhere. So I did a video on how to build the best mouse trap, how to increase your success of eliminating mice. And I've recorded that. I haven't posted it yet because I'm feeling like I might get a bunch of hate. So I'm rambling a bit, Justin, but I realize that, maybe I am starting to get in tune with the platform a little bit more than I thought.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And if you do post it, I'm interested to see how the reaction with the mice, how the mice go. Cause I just assume that is probably a touchy subject. You might cross some humanitarian thing and get down the wrong rabbit hole with that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what my thoughts are on that. It's like, it's a problem. Teach people how to solve the problem. And I'm assuming, knowing you too, you're not doing it in an inhumane way.
No. But it's a bit of fact of life, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I remember the one email one post I did on TikTok not too long ago. I had water running in the frame of the camera as I was breaking a bottle. I was doing a cutting glass thing. Man, the hate I had from the youth population on leaving the water running, which I totally get. Like I get it.
Yeah.
Reality is holding a camera, cutting a glass bottle, moving from boiling water to cold water all in 60 seconds is hard to do, but people won't cut you slack. That's okay too.
It's got to keep you honest.
Yeah.
Tim, it's been a pleasure. What is your TikTok handle? I'm assuming a lot of people are probably curious after listening to this to go check out some of your content here or watch some of the things that we were talking about. So can you share your handle with us?
Yeah, the handle is the DIY Trail, all one word. My last name is Traill with 2 L's. So it's at the DIY Trail.
Yep.
On TikTok. And I'm on Instagram as well, but it's pretty much just a copy of what I'm doing over on TikTok.
Okay. So your preferred platform, Instagram or TikTok, feel free to go find them. The DIY Trail, and that's TRAILL, 2 L's there.
Correct.
Tim, my final question for you. Feel free to take it wherever you'd like to take it. But if you had the attention of a group of graduating college seniors for a 16-week course, what topic would you teach, and why would you teach it?
So this is a really, really good question. I think the most important thing for me in my life that I had to learn myself, and I continue to learn, and I referenced that a few times through this conversation, is diversity inclusion. And I know there's got to be some curriculums evolving and some coursework around that. I don't know what they look like, but diversity inclusion is really important. And I'm not talking about the most obvious forms of diversity and inclusion, like gender equity and sexual orientation and things like that. But I'm thinking even beyond that into those are disabilities, visible disabilities, disabilities that aren't visible, mental health issues. As the world continues to evolve and the geography becomes less important, and things like working for a global company and not physically being present, being virtual, being remote, means more people from diverse backgrounds and cultures with different thought processes are going to be pulled together, right? You're not just going to be working in that little, that company in your city that you were born and raised in, that your parents were born and raised in. So diversity inclusion would be really, to me, that would be something that would be a huge focus for teaching young grads, help to accelerate them into the realities that they're going to face in the workplace. Again, project, you get on a call and the first time you're in a meeting and someone says the word project, so maybe it's some Canadian like me, you call them out, man, that's going to be a strike. You may not even realize it. Being aware. Yeah, there you go.
Well, Tim, it's been a blast. I am so excited to see what's in your long-term future, but also your near-term future, if where you decide to take your career and where TikTok brings you as well. I really appreciate your so genuine on the platform. As soon as I started watching your videos, which is why I reached out, I was like, man, this guy just loves to make these videos. He's not doing it for any other intrinsic reason besides the fact that, like, hey, I want to learn and I want to inspire other people to learn. So that's super cool. I appreciate you joining me on the podcast.
Yeah, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today, Justin. And I really appreciate what you're doing for youth with this theme of the struggle is real. I think it's critical, and I think there's a lot of value in the content you're bringing forward.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening. If you like this conversation today, be sure to subscribe so you'll be notified about new episodes. If you want to connect with me, send me a message on Instagram. I'm at Justin Lee Peters. You can find show notes with links to everything we discussed today at justinpeters.co. This episode was produced by Gabby Dimeke. I'm your host, Justin Peters. Thanks for tuning in.